That breaker. Glad you're still watching Science Breakfast with me, Alan Habert, and the sign language interpreter is Chebe Watt. In studio, we are with Aska Josephine. She is the executive director of Fedwen Kenya, and her voicer is Pamela Wango. And this morning, we are talking about the pre-conference that Fedwen is going to be hosting in Nairobi. But if you missed the first segment where we spoke about the genesis of Fedwen and why it was founded, the challenges that deaf women go through on a daily basis, and what Fedwen is doing as interventions, all that is packed in the first segment. So basically what I'm requesting you to do is when the show ends, go back and rewatch across our social media platforms to get to learn more about what Fedwen is doing. Now, I want us to switch attention, Madam Aska, to the World Federation of the Deaf pre-conference. But before we talk about the pre-conference, because I think that is the tip of the iceberg, what is the World Federation of the Deaf conference? What is it about, and why is it coming to Nairobi this time round?
The World Federation of the Deaf main conference is happening because the WFD in 2021 had the Congress in South Korea at Jeju, and they usually have after 4 years they have another meeting. So this is the next meeting that is happening for the World Federation of the Deaf, where they will be hosting their members. So Kenya bid to host the WFD conference so that they can train their members, the affiliated members, the ordinary members. So the Kenya National Association of the Deaf is a member of the World Federation of the Deaf. The World Federation of the Deaf has over 200 members that are different deaf associations in different countries. So they will be coming to Kenya to have their meeting. Those who are able, they will be coming to participate in this conference and also to get some training from the World Federation of the Deaf, which is now being planned in Nairobi. The theme is advancing sign language rights. And what they will be discussing when they're there are artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence impacts and affects deaf communities, and how can we leverage AI to benefit the deaf community. We're also going to be discussing climate change, and third, we are going to be talking about leadership within these deaf associations and how we can strengthen the capacity of deaf organizations globally to be able to advocate and amplify the voices of deaf people. So this is going to be happening on 12th to 14th of August 2025, and we expect around 250 delegates to be attending from different countries in the world.
And the thematic areas, allow me to delve a little bit into the main conference before we talk about the pre-conference. Artificial intelligence. Before we even talk about artificial intelligence, there was a sign language bill that was being pushed through Parliament. Are there any updates on that particular legislation? Of course, we saw the passing of the Persons with Disabilities Act and the Persons with Disabilities National Policy, but the particular bill on sign language is still impending. What are your thoughts about such an important piece of legislation?
The Kenya Sign Language Bill is stuck in Parliament because there was another bill that was also talking about Kenya Sign Language that was in the Senate. So there were some different areas. One bill was talking about mostly issues of education, deaf education. That was the bill that was in Senate. And the KSL bill that was in Parliament was talking about sign language access and how deaf people need to access communication. So it was mostly about issues of sign language interpretation. So these two KSL bills, they needed to be streamlined so that they could become one document that then would later on be pushed to Parliament. So those processes of streamlining, finding areas that can be merged to become one document or one bill is what has been making the process take too long. So as a deaf community, we have been advocating for that to be finished and for it, of course, to be ratified, because communication access is what we want. There are so many issues that we are experiencing. Like currently, the world is changing, we are aware. The developing world has already changed.
Yeah.
Accessibility for deaf people in the developing world is so much better. They do very well. But even here, for example, as I'm coming to speak to you here at Science TV in the breakfast show, I need to look for my own sign language interpreter. If I was in a developed world, then they would have already planned that for me. I just come and do the interview, and after that, then I will, you know, put maybe my fingerprint on a device to show that I have accessed the service, and the government will facilitate that sign language interpreter. For example, in Kenya, if I want to go to a hospital, I need to plan myself to make sure that I have accessibility in that hospital.
Yeah.
Now the KSL bill that is in Parliament discusses how can government support communication access for deaf communities, and how can we train sign language interpreters even in different levels, from diploma even to masters, so that we are able to access quality services depending on the education of the sign language interpreter. So we want to have a center of excellence where we can train, monitor, and even you know, a center that can employ sign language interpreters to ensure that the quality of KSL is maintained. So this streamlining process is what has made the KSL bill stay stranded for quite some time, and we have seen that the movement of it has been really slow. But we want also to ensure that those issues of education, quality of education for deaf communities are also captured, as it has been in the KSL bill that was in Senate. So now the National Assembly has listened to a plea and has accepted to fast track the approval, but we are still waiting.
Yeah, indeed. That would be a major boost to the deaf community. Now to artificial intelligence. What are your thoughts about, because there are so many companies that are coming out with are basically interacting sign language with artificial intelligence, and they are creating, let me call them bots, or they are creating basically, how can I call them? Miniatures on the internet to help to provide sign language interpretation. What do you think? What are your thoughts on the intersection of technology and sign language?
Technology, you know, like you're saying, the bots, we are looking at it and we are wondering as a community, because at the same time, you cannot fight technology. It already came. It is already there, and it is not leaving anytime soon. For me, as Aska, as an individual, these are my feelings about this. Talking to a bot interpreter is not access for me. How would you feel if you're speaking to a bot to articulate your issues, as opposed to speaking to a human being who has feelings and can, you know, I am talking to a person like me, who can be able to articulate my issues, who can understand how I feel. When I sign, if I have emotions, if maybe I'm angry or I'm happy, then they can reflect my emotion. If I'm angry, their voice will change. If I'm happy, their voice will change to match my feelings. But will a bot be able to do this? That's a question we are asking ourselves. Yes, so for me as Aska, if I had an option, then even most of the deaf community, majority of us feel I prefer a sign language interpreter as opposed to artificial intelligence. But at the same time, if I go to a meeting in a company which uses AI, then I have no right to say, why are you using this or why are you using that? You know, they are trying to boost access to communication. I prefer a human, a sign language interpreter. But if AI has come there and technology is advancing and we cannot do away with it, then let's train it to do a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Training it, doing a good job is very important. But I also hear you on the aspect of, particularly where you say you're sad, but then the AI is basically talking to you in a still voice. Then it might not be able to take into account your sadness. But also, as you have acknowledged, that probably over time they will be trained to mimic the client's feelings. But when you look at use case scenarios, and of course affordability, sign language interpretation isn't that cheap to get quality services. So when you look at use scenarios such as in hospitals and learning institutions where they are not able to afford a sign language interpreter full time, but they are able to afford this technology, then probably deaf students would be able to be integrated in learning institutions a little bit quicker. Don't you think this is a fact?
I'm trying to imagine A pregnant deaf woman going to a hospital, and when they're doing their test, you know, you have the AI that is explaining this and that, and you're trying to explain your issues. It's funny. It's very funny. But as long as we are accessing information, because if we look at the situation where we are in right now, we don't access communication, we don't access information, and it affects us so much. We get wrong medication. So if it can save our lives, then sure. But if I have another option, I am looking for a sign language interpreter.
Very interesting indeed. There are so many scenarios that we could look at. But now let us switch attention to the pre-conference that FEDWIN is hosting. Why is this pre-conference important, and how is it different from the main conference?
Okay, so the pre-conference, the idea was mine. And I had gone to participate at the WFD Congress in South Korea, and that was my first time in 2021. And when I was there, I realized that there were deaf women, but at the front, in leadership, where are the deaf women? We were not there. And I am a feminist, I will not refuse.
There is nothing wrong with being a feminist.
Yes, I always want to see a woman like me sitting there at the front. Anytime I walk into a space, if there are people who are leaders, I want to know that there is a woman there. And I hope one time also we will even have a female president in Kenya. I hope so. So when I visited South Korea for the WFD Congress, I realized that the leadership was mostly male-dominated. It's not a bad thing, but you know, if you have maybe the leader being a man, maybe the chairperson being a man, and the vice chairperson being a woman, that is, I know my issues are articulated in that space. But I did not see any deaf women in leadership. It was wanting. So I asked those who have been participating in the WFD Congresses and their conferences, I asked them, where are the deaf women? And what can we do to amplify the voices of deaf women globally? How can we come together? You know, in the different countries, for example, how can we have chapters, maybe an Asian chapter, an African chapter, to strengthen the voices of deaf women? Because even in the disability movement, deaf communities are so much left behind, not even talking about deaf women. Now where are deaf women if the deaf community is marginalized already? So we need to amplify our voices to be seen, for us to be heard, and for us to even address a number of things that only affect us as deaf women. So we started to talk about ways forward. How can we come together? And they mentioned that we have a conference that is happening in Kenya, that Kenya already bid for and has won. Why can't you host a platform for people to come and discuss these issues? And I was a bit scared. I wasn't ready to take this up. I felt, do I really have the capacity? But then I did my advocacy, and I did things here and there, and the pre-conference now has come to Kenya. So now it happens that I'm the host. FEDWIN Kenya is the host, and we will be hosting 2 days before, on 10th and 11th at Kisii before the main conference.
Oh, amazing.
So our theme is strengthening gender diversity within deaf organizations, because we realize that those who are coming to participate in the main conference are delegates and members of the WFD, and they are male-dominated spaces.
So you're not going to see women there?
Yes, I want to see women there. I want to see, even within the national associations of the deaf, I want to see a deaf woman there. Because we have never had, even in the WFD, we have never had a deaf woman as chair since it was formed in 19-something. Even the Kenya National Association of the Deaf, since it was formed in 1988, we have never had a deaf woman as chair. And it's also a mistake on our part that we have never voted for a deaf woman to take lead. So we need now to make sure that deaf women know they can vie for these positions. We need to strengthen the capacities of deaf women. It will not be given to us when we are sitting. We need to strengthen our capacities. We need to change our perspective, to stop sitting at the back and come to the front and show what we can do. Because if we're just complaining, we have not gotten this, we have not gotten that, then we will never get it. We need to work hard and make sure that we have those credentials, we have the capacity to lead. And you know, the majority of us have failed in that area. We have not stood up for these positions. So how can we strengthen the capacities of deaf women in politics, in normal leadership? Like, for example, we encourage other people to vie for these positions, even in politics, even in the Kenyan politics. But have we ever had a deaf woman who has been able to do that? So we want to boost the self-esteem of deaf women. We want to discuss issues of leadership and how they can participate in decision-making spaces as deaf women. So that is why we have decided to host this pre-conference, and I'm hoping that after this pre-conference, then we can have a chapter to continue this mentorship and leadership training. Like in East Africa, we would need to have a platform that can, mentor deaf women. In Africa, even in Europe, they can come up with their own. In Asia, they can come up with their own. And then globally, we can be able to amplify the voices of deaf women and discuss those issues that particularly affect us together in collaboration so that we ensure that our rights are also addressed.
Amazing work you're doing. Amazing work you're doing. I want us to put a pin in the conversation yet again. And when we come back from the break, you're going to be telling us how can people participate. And we've already spoken about the themes, but what are some of the other activities that are going to be happening? Who is going to be attending? The delegates, where are they coming from, and how many are they? And also, whoever is watching, how can they participate? Do they need to pay for anything? Are there tickets? But of course, we'll be concluding with the main conference as well, how people can be a part of that, and finally, how people can get in touch with the FedWin to be beneficiaries of the work that you are doing. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're coming back with our guest this morning. Keep it